Hello, and welcome to the Financial Services Innovation Coalition's video podcast. My name is Brady Buckner, and I am the president of the Financial Services Innovation Coalition, or FSIC as we call it, FSIC. The topic today is the economy, and specifically the consumer debt, the consumer financial health crisis, which we just released a white paper, and it was authored by Mr. Flores, who I'll introduce in a moment. And it was our attempt to tell regular people what's really happening out there and why they need to look at electing better elected officials. So a little bit about FSIC. We're an economic empowerment platform. We conduct research, we run programs in communities, and we help those communities advocate for themselves. We also advocate for specific issues. We're looking at low-income communities and communities that don't have the ability or the knowledge sometimes to help themselves. The people in FSIC, we're a network of industry innovators, legislators, community groups, and academics, and we all really believe in helping, apply emerging technologies and innovative solutions to help the markets and help underserved people who are sometimes shut out of these markets. We believe that if all communities have economic empowerment and access to opportunities, then those communities will thrive where they're not right now. And if that happens, we believe the economy will thrive for everyone. So this is our mission. So today our guest is Michael Flores, or G. Michael Flores, as you'll see on some of his writings. And Michael is a longtime member of the FSIC advisory board. He's a consultant and a researcher. He studied financial services companies and consumer credit in general for about 40 years. He's written and published research papers on consumer credit in the United States and the United Kingdom, as well as papers on payments, including general purpose reloadable and payroll prepaid cards. He is also a faculty member with Pacific Coast Banking School at the University of Washington in Seattle, my old stomping grounds. So to start off with, it's my understanding that you just published a book. And I read the early version of it and was really excited when you decided to go this route. An economist, a highly trained economist writing a fiction novel. And I just was so. Tell us a little bit about yourself that I didn't cover in the bio, and then tell us a little bit about the book before we get into the consumer financial health crisis.
Thank you, Brady. I appreciate the opportunity to do a shameless plug for the book, but yeah, I think you covered pretty much what I did in the 80s and 90s. I worked with primarily commercial banks in the United States and from the money center bank, what used to be called money center banks in New York, to large regional banks around the country. In the early 90s, I started working internationally with banks in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Madrid, and other parts of Europe. And then toward the end of the 90s, I don't know what the average age of our audience is, but it may be, people don't remember Y2K, but that's when we were all in flux about the end of the world because the computers only recorded 2 digits of the year rather than 4 digits, and everybody's had to update software. And so,
yeah, I'm aging myself, but I remember that we were celebrating. I was in the financial services industry, so this is a big deal. And I
yeah.
remember celebrating then going, I think I had a cell phone back at that time. It was a
Right.
real old one, but we were like, okay, did the world end? And it didn't. So
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think that there was some rightful concern because I had a client who had a customer. They had outsourced their data processing to one of the major outsourcers in the country at the time. And the customer kept on making prepayments, make 2 or 3 payments every month. And so the due date would advance. So they didn't reschedule the loan to show that, yeah, they made these additional payments. So, but the next payment is due next month. They kept on rolling the payment forward. And so in the early part of, or the latter part of 98, the next due date showed up as January '00. And what happened was the system assessed 99 years of late charges. So I said, well, there's something to Y2K. So, uh,
Wow.
so we
Blast from
were,
the past,
and
huh?
yeah, one of the side things that happened, obviously, everybody bought new computers, and the software companies all updated their software. And so it's one of those things where we avoided a huge issue, but if we didn't do anything, something would have happened. And I think we'll get to the point of our discussion. If we don't do something, something negative will happen. And it is happening right now. But to get follow on with this, in the early 2000s, I was doing a lot of work for groups in Washington, D.C. And based upon some of these white papers that I did, I ended up testifying before Congress, three committees of
Right.
the House and two committees of the Senate. Back when you could get some reasonable questions from the members before it was more theater than anything else. And then, interestingly enough, I started looking at uh, uh, artificial intelligence and robotics, and just out of interest more than anything else. And
You were real early to that, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
way ahead of the curve. Well, in terms of the impact, I mean, AI has been talked about for a few decades, and it was just theory. A lot of it was theory at the time. But back in 2015, I gave some presentations and around the country in Y2K. And then when I taught, and one small correction to the bio is that I'm now retired from Pacific Coast Banking School after 10 years. But,
Oh,
uh, I gave a presentation on AI and robotics and the potential of what would happen. And most people's eyes glazed over. And it was interesting that what I thought was an aggressive timeline on my part and what I thought would happen has just been blown away by AI.
yeah.
It's just hard to believe. I mean, you've got systems out there now that are updating themselves. So you would get, to people who can relate, updates to Microsoft Windows or updates to your Apple operating system, uh, which would all be driven by human developers and programmers. And now some of these systems are updating themselves. So we're
Yeah,
starting to
well,
lose.
I will
Uh,
have you come back to talk about that. It
yeah,
is it is a something that we follow very closely because it's gonna affect every aspect of our lives. And as
right,
you know, about every aspect of our lives is touched heavily or lightly by our financial position. So
right,
one thing
and
I'd like to get out of the way real quickly here is that
right,
debt is not simply people irresponsibly spending, going out and buying jewelry or vacations and things like that. That can happen, but it is really not at this point in time. It's really not the rule. It's more of the exception. Tell us a little bit about individual choices and people choosing to use credit.
it's been interesting. As we showed in the research paper, the 50s and the 60s, the American public in general, the growing middle class, participated in the growing economy. And as new processes, new technologies came along and productivity increased, uh, workers also shared in that wealth creation, if you will. So wages and productivity sort of rose in tandem for 15 to 20 years. Around 1970, what happened is that productivity was increasing, but it was not being shared, with the workers. So you had a steep increase, in productivity and a much shallower increase in workers' wages. The problem with that, besides the obvious, is that you still had inflation, and obviously you had some pretty significant inflation in the early 70s. And
Right.
what people started doing to make ends meet was using credit, and that was concurrent at the time where credit cards were coming uh, into vogue, if you will. And rather than in the 60s, you had charge cards. You had whereas American Express or Diners Club or whatever, you would charge and you'd pay it off at the end of the month. Now Visa, time MasterCharge, now MasterCard came out and democratized access to this credit. Well, people started filling the gap of what they earned and what they were paying out through credit cards and other short-term credit facilities. And that has been growing and keeps on growing, as the statistics show in the report, is that it is a significant, we're talking trillions of dollars that people owe. So it's not, yeah, there is some, obviously people will go out and buy things just for whatever reason that they don't need.
I remember my first brand new shiny credit card.
Yeah, yeah.
I bought a magazine subscription from the phone call.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't cost any money. Here, take the card.
Yeah.
But so, and that's the issue. Healthcare costs have been going up, transportation costs. You may get into the whole issue of auto debt and negative equity that's being created now and rolled over into loans. But people are using credit in many instances just to survive. And so while their credit rating may not show it, they may not be delinquent, but they're being very stretched, and they are one unanticipated expense away from potential disaster, insolvency, if you will. So
isn't about half the country doesn't have $1,000 for a financial emergency, or 2/3 is 400, I believe.
Yeah.
Some really bad numbers. That means, and we say this over and over, it's one of our main things, that there's so many people living paycheck to paycheck that we kind of have tipped over the edge of them being able to handle that. And so now they're using whatever credit they have. And if they don't have credit, they're in real trouble right now.
Right. And the emergence of non-bank consumer credit providers.
Yeah.
There's a demand and people will fill that demand. And whether it is payday credit cards, payday lending, auto title lending, people are using these again to fill the gap. And not to say they're all bad. Used properly, there's a purpose for each of those loans, each of those vehicles. But what happens is that people, if they can't pay it off, they roll it, and all of a sudden they cannot end up paying it off. It becomes insurmountable. And so there's got to be a way of people to do a reset at some point. Obviously the answer long term is that we get wages back up to start matching productivity levels. And so rather than just shareholders benefiting from productivity increases and management benefiting from it, workers benefit in a share of it as well. And so that, I hope that doesn't sound socialistic, because it really isn't. It's just a matter of
No. I think that the numbers, and these are not exact. I think it's like the worker pay during a time period has gone up like 33%. The productivity was up like 90%. It's like 3 to 1. And so people wonder why, inflation has been at 3%. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. I know I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but it is a serious issue. So please continue.
It is, and look, I'm calling it a credit supported survival system. It's people have to use credit in order to make ends meet. And as I say, whether it's a healthcare crisis, or an auto, something as simple as an auto repair that may cost them a couple $1,000. And to your earlier point, they don't have $400 in savings. So what happens? Uh, they borrow more if they're stretched to the limit where they can't access any more credit, then they're faced with delinquencies, foreclosures, whatever it may be.
A repossession can be devastating to someone that
Well, it
has to,
can
drive to
because
work.
it also deprives the individual of getting to work.
Yeah,
And a lot of folks live in areas where there's not mass transit, access to mass transit. And so if they don't have the vehicle, they don't go to work, and then it's just a downward spiral that's non-recoverable.
yeah, we work in a lot of rural areas, and transportation is some families have a car that's kind of shared, and if that breaks down or someone else is using it, it's really a crisis. So,
Yeah,
you use the term credit supported survival system, which I just loved.
yeah.
And it sounds very economist. And so tell me a little bit more about this.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, they just, folks just don't have enough income at the end of the month uh, to meet all their expenses. And they don't have savings that we've talked about to fill the gap, or if they had savings, they've used it, and now this is their method of last resort is to use credit. It's just to bridge the difference between income and cost of living. It's as simple as that. So one of the problems you get into is when you start charging for consumables, using credit for consumables.
Like food.
Food, absolutely. I mean, there is of all things. I've seen a commercial on television recently uh, promoting short-term access to credit. It's $200, $300, and the guy's at a vending machine, and he gets credit to access a vending machine. I mean, my God, it's
Are
crazy.
you serious? Oh,
Absolutely. I mean, it's
I
crazy.
believe it.
It's not, don't get me started on the online gambling stuff. I mean, talk about
No, no,
putting,
no, no. Yeah, no, I get too heated. I get too.
yeah. So, without getting too much into the weeds on this, we'll suggest people read the report. You can make a plug for that at the end, where to get that. But it boils down to we're not making enough money. We're not spending lavishly on unnecessary luxuries. We're just trying to meet, whether it's rent, mortgage, car payments, food, education needs, whatever it may be. And at the end of the month, we just don't have enough money. And so we're basically supporting it through short-term debt. And it's high cost debt because uh, let's take credit cards. I mean, you're probably talking in the 20-30% range APRs. And if you try to make minimum payments on that, you'll be in debt for decades.
Yeah,
And
they
then,
passed a law some years ago that said the minimum payment had to be enough to pay it off in a reasonable time, but it seems like that's kind of been forgotten. And when I was a banker, I would see people that had these massive balances, and it was because they went on a weekend trip, and then they've been making minimum payments and late fees and all that.
yeah, I mean,
You said the
now,
interest rates are approaching 30% now for.
well, on the credit cards, yeah. I
I
mean,
know that they some have been, but I thought those were like the
no,
really
I mean, on
risky.
mainline cards, if you've taken advantage of a credit advance, you'll get offered a credit advance or cash advance on your card. And let's say that's for 6% for 12 months. Well, great. That's not a bad deal. But unless you have the discipline or the means to pay that off in the 12 months, at the end of that 12 months, that's going to revert to a market rate. And typically that minimum market rate is going to be 17, 18%, and can climb up to 30%. So it's one of those things, once you get to that range, excuse me, that it's you can't recover from
Yeah,
it.
I have a very, very high credit score, and all of my credit cards, except for maybe one, are 20, 22, 23% now.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I have no blemish. It's just they just gone up.
yeah. And if you're paying it off, if you're paying the statement balance off every month, that's fine. You're not incurring any of that rate. But boy, once you start going less than the statement balance, or uh, anything between that and the minimum payment, then it starts rolling and it starts increasing. It's you used to be things on these onerous rates, uh, that there were laws against them, usury rates laws.
Yeah, it was called usury. I don't hear that term anymore. And
No,
it's still the definition is still you can apply it here, but
yeah, you can, but it's like anything else. We legitimized a lot of things that we protected folks against. Bankers in the past. I remember when I started lending in the early 70s, that you looked at credit capacity, collateral, and made sure that person had means of repayment. What's the source of repaying that loan? And if they couldn't meet it, then you counsel them, you know, you can't make these payments. You don't have the means of doing it. Look at a different card, do something else, that can help out. But now, uh, people are encouraged to spend what they can. There aren't the guardrails anymore that there used to be, and it's a shame. It's whether it's banking. We've legitimized gambling. We've legitimized usurious products that are out there. So it's
so what are
becoming too
so
easy for people to get into this mess.
we can talk we could spend the whole show talking about the problems that people get into. Let's go move to like maybe some solutions that people have looked at in the past and they just they don't understand short-term lending. They don't understand programs that can help you get out of debt. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there are several ways of addressing this. If you don't mind, I'm going to refer to some notes so I don't miss anything. Uh,
Well,
Obviously,
one of the main ones. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
you can go the minimum payment route, which is going to drag on for decades. And if you do that on say a $30,000 debt, you're going to end up paying $96,000 plus on that. Credit counseling is another way. A lot of not-for-profits offer credit counseling, the debt management plan, uh, which for some people will work fine. And typically you can reduce the interest rate, but your principal is still going to be the same. And so it will set out over a 4 to 5 year period a way for you to pay down your debt. And that's you've got to be disciplined not to access any more debt during that period of time. Uh, Debt settlement is another key issue, and that's one of and before I get into that, let me talk about the extremes: Chapter 13 bankruptcy and Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Uh, 13 is a way of holding on to your credit, and typically you're going to have a 3 to 5 year plan. And although your credit's going to be impacted for 7 years, your credit score is going to be impacted. And you're going to have ongoing court oversight to make sure that the debt is repaid. The final extreme is going to be Chapter 7, and that's for severe insolvency. And that's where all your debts are discharged, with the exception of potentially your home, and maybe your car, just so you have
And
a
student loans, you can't discharge student
yeah,
loans.
yeah. And that's a huge number. Student loans is a huge number that's out there right now. And the problem is you're going to have 10 years of credit damage. So your ability to access more credit is going to be severely limited or impossible. But I think, for in between the debt settlement issue is out there, and that's where a firm can negotiate principal reduction as well as rate reduction, and work with the consumer and the creditors to come up with a repayment plan. And that could cause, and it's not free. There are costs associated with these services, but that's probably one of the most cost-effective ways of doing of trying to work through your credit problems. But there's one thing on debt relief. IRS taxes you as if that's income. So if you're forgiven,
Yeah.
let's say, round numbers, $25,000 in debt, and let's say the 10,000 is forgiven. Well, that counts as income. You have to declare that as income on that forgiven debt. So there's a
Yeah.
downside
I
on
don't
that.
agree with that.
But I know FSIC is proposing some legislation that will provide that forgiven debt is not counted as income. And that would be extremely beneficial for folks that avail themselves of these services. So each one provides uh, options for the consumer, from moderate credit impact to severe credit impact. And it also requires that consumer to have discipline not to increase credit. But sometimes, how do you avoid that? You're still stuck in the trap of, even with your basic expenses, exceeding your income for the month. How do you fill that gap? And that's the problem. I mean, part of the study was we looked at several metro areas around the country, and this isn't some left-wing think tank coming up with these numbers. This is MIT and other credible sources. That you look at, what does it cost for a low to mid-income person to live in these metro areas, including all the costs that are associated with monthly expenses. And for each area, what is called the living wage is much higher than the minimum wage that's offered. Now, I know the arguments for minimum wage, that if you increase the minimum wage, it encourages businesses to automate because of the cost associated with that. And how many people work in minimum wage jobs versus others that don't? So it's a good metric to look at, and there's a lot of nuances to it, but still there's a gap associated with what people who are entering the marketplace or who have limited options to employment are earning, and what it actually costs to live in that area.
Man, yeah, it's a problem. Could you talk just a bit more on? I think that people maybe have heard a little bit about balance reduction or some of these products, and why is that a better option if they can do it than bankruptcy? Obviously, the credit score impact, but they're really working on the balance to lower the balance of what people owe to knock down some of that interest,
Right.
help them.
Yeah. Versus credit counseling, which structures the debt, but keeps the principal balance intact. It just basically lowers the rate that you're going to pay for this. The debt settlement works to reduce parts of the principal of the various creditors, which helps significantly. And it also works to manage and reduce the interest rate on there. And so, yeah, that is a viable option for a good number of people that are out there. And as I said, there's costs associated with it because it is a service, and these services are negotiating with the creditors.
Um,
That can happen.
Mike, I hate to tell you, there's a cost for everything.
Oh yeah.
So some just cost more than others, and it's not always the dollars that you pay, it's the 7 or 10 years of damage you do to your credit report. So you're going to pay a fortune if you have to buy a car. You're going to go to one of those used car lots and pay 30-35% to get a car.
Yeah.
So nothing, yeah, there's a cost to everything. So
Yeah. So I think it's just like these alternative credit, consumer credit programs that are out there, products that are out there, used appropriately and judiciously, they're fine. So understanding which is going to work best for you. I mean, if you're so severely underwater and so insolvent, then yeah, a Chapter 7 will finally give you some relief from, the creditors calling all the time and knocking at your door. But that's an extreme. I say, always look at the other ground. The minimum payment is one way, but that's going to cost you a ton of money in the long term. So whether it's credit counseling or debt settlement, and a lot of times debt settlement will be more cost effective for you.
yeah, and not a lot of people know about it. That's why we're trying to kind of, we're about solutions, and
Right.
there are no wonderful solutions right now. It's just, increase wages, but um
Yeah, I think it's a in the capitalist system, there, you come up, you find needs that are out there, and this is a product that meets a need that's out there. So is it right for everybody? No, none of these are right for everybody. It's just finding it fills a gap in this continuum of services when you're becoming so debt ridden that you see no way out of it. This fills a significant gap in there between paying 3 to 4 times that debt amount in interest payments over the life of, if you're making minimum payments, or going Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So this fills a great middle ground uh, for individuals. And I think it's a viable option. It's needed. Is it right for everybody? No, but it is a great solution for a good number of people.
yeah, and again, I don't think a lot of people know about it or understand it. There's been so much media talk for anything that's not just paying your bills outright as
Yeah, and
standard.
you have to look at the companies that are doing it. Every type of product I've seen out there over my career, there are good players and bad players. And so you've got to do your research and understand who's out there, look at the Better Business Bureau ratings, and who's a legitimate provider of services. Because if there's a way for the bad guys to make money, they'll do it. And in this day and age, with
Always.
getting back to AI again, but you don't know what's real and what's not real. And so, it's incumbent both upon the legitimate providers of these services to market themselves and the user, the client, to do their due diligence in figuring out who I should go to and talk to, and talk to several providers out there and get their solution for you and what the cost would be. But again, to me, it fills a critical gap uh, out there that wasn't available before.
Yeah, and I will continue to talk about different solutions like that. I would like to go back to something that there's a lot of people out there right now that have a full-time job or a full-time and part-time or two full-time or both members if it's a family are working, and they're just simply the pay for the cost of living all across the country is really bad right now. So I think you call it the America's income cost problem. And one of the actually, I'm going to let you talk about that because this is really important for people to understand that you are not doing anything wrong. You're not a terrible at managing money. You're not this person that's irresponsible. It's simply the fact that inflation has gone up for various reasons we won't get into. And prices have, because of that, prices have gone up so much, and the wages are not rising nearly. In fact, over the last, since the year 2000, most of the wealth that has been created in this country has gone to the top 1%. So it's not being distributed down to the employees. And that's why people are in this position, not because they're bad people. And I can't put a strong enough point on that. And people that were middle class maybe a couple years ago are living paycheck to paycheck. So can you talk about the income cost problem a little bit? Maybe some of the data?
Yeah, it's I don't see a short-term solution to this because if you look back in the 50s and 60s where one income household worked, where employees did share in the productivity gains of the companies, and they were able to participate in the market and go out and buy the goods and services their companies were producing, everyone
Right.
benefited. Then when that started to diverge, and then we needed a two income to support the household, you also then had increasing cost. You had childcare costs to be concerned with, among others. So it's, I think one of the key things people should think about as they go forward is that as the middle income consumer gets more stressed, the less they can participate in the marketplace and buy goods and services. So, there was a story uh, decades ago about Henry Ford in that he increased the wages his employees were getting, and then so they could, buy his car. Well,
Right, right.
that's
You told
sort
me
of
about that.
old wives' tale. He increased he did increase the wages as because of competition. Some of the other automakers that were coming up at the time were paying more, so he had to at least match that. But the un not unintended, but probably the unexpected consequence of that is that now these people had more money to buy Ford cars because they were still probably the most cost-effective transportation at the time. The other builders were probably more niche in terms of luxury market. So as people have less disposable income, the less they can participate in the economy. And that ultimately hurts the businesses that are out there. And so unless we get to the point where the worker can participate more in the value they bring to the company, then the more stress on the business is going to happen because if those businesses are strictly relying on the top 10%, even the top 1% for all their businesses, most businesses can't survive because that's not the target market. So what do we do? How do we handle that? That's a great question. I think if Congress was doing their job, they would really start looking at this and addressing it. It's only going to get worse, and I'll dive into it right now. AI and robotics is going to exacerbate this problem significantly. And there are people that say, it's going to be, millions will be without jobs. Well, it's like any other technology, new jobs will occur, but are the people in their 40s and 50s, can they get retrained for these new jobs? And if they do, what's the company going to do? Would they rather hire somebody in their 20s that's going to be cheaper than somebody in their mid 40s?
Yeah, we know the answer to that. It's
No, they won't. And so you're going to have more people out there that can't afford the goods and services these companies are producing. So unless there's a profound change in this, these companies will suffer ultimately because they've lost market, they've lost consumers who cannot afford their goods and services. Uh, it's a self-defeating cycle. And so some of the solutions that people have talked about is universal basic income, sort of a social security for all, if you will. That, you know,
Who's going to pay for that? It's not going to be
well,
Elon
that's
Musk.
another question. Well, and one of the questions and one of the answers to that is the companies who are benefiting from AI will, whether they call it a tax or whatever they call it, will fund will uh, this universal basic income. Even people like Elon Musk went further than that. He said we should have a universal super income. It's just not people that can get by with rent and groceries and some medical,
Not
but that
subsistence living,
not
like
subsistence,
actual
but
living.
actually have a decent quality of life. And for some of all people to say that, Musk, and I think whatever you think of him, I mean, he's done some amazing things, and I think he really understands obviously what can occur with AI in the future, and so it's a huge societal shift, huge societal uh, uh, change of expectations because people forever have defined themselves by the work they did. And it's who they are. And without work of consequence, without the traditional going in 9 to 5 and you do your work and it doesn't exist anymore, but used to, you get a pension at the end of it at 65 and
Oh, don't get me
uh,
started on pensions.
and so, now it's the 401k or whatever it may be. But, we've got to change what it means, I guess, to be a human and exist. What do we do? You know, Not everybody's going to be creative and get out there and create music or art or literature or whatever it may be. Uh, you know, so I don't know, but because we've been so ingrained from the societal standpoint of what's expected of us once we graduate high school or college and we get into the nine to five routine, then that's not available anymore. What do we do? And this, we're not there yet, but I would say by the sometime in the 2030s, 2040s, that's going to be the issue. And earlier I said something, if we don't address it now, we'll have a huge problem. If you wait until it happens, if you wait until a car wreck, then it's too late. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and trying to convince Congress to do something ahead of time, it's like convincing a municipality to spend millions of dollars on a new sewer project that nobody sees. Yeah, they'd rather see a nice park being built that people could use and so on and so forth. But if it's on the ground, it's out of sight, why am I going to spend
yeah.
this money? Well, we've got
Let
to,
me recap a little bit. So we talked about how the reason people are having to use debt to make ends meet is because wages have
not kept up.
people talk about wages are up right now, and I'm like, they might be a tiny bit, but we're still so far behind until we get even, which maybe we never will by the time we all need universal basic income or super income. That that's the problem. We've talked a little bit about there are some solutions. Reducing your debt, getting some help, counseling.
Right.
These are good solutions. But until we have policy change at the highest level, so can you talk about consumer policymakers, that the policymakers don't see? It's like they don't see the consumer that is the rule now, not the exception.
Well, it's tough, and it's a lot of policymakers out there are focusing on, particularly in the House, are focusing on being reelected. And they really don't. It was interesting. I ran across a retired senator. I won't mention his name, but well respected. particularly in defense industry. Uh, and he said, individual members really can't express themselves in terms of what their core beliefs are or to benefit their constituencies because they take all their leads from the leadership. And the leadership is so political right now on both sides of the aisle that decisions are being made how to get into power, how to stay in the power. And so what's lost in that equation is their constituents. And the majority of their constituents are these middle income folks that are being squeezed right now. I mean, the top 1%, even top 10%, they can take care of themselves. Let's not worry about that. But it's that whole group of individuals that they need to get a better understanding of. And some may even do that right now. Those that aren't focused on getting on the cable news shows every night and working with their constituencies, but to try to get something that leadership will support, get behind, they're tilting at windmills at this point in time. So the electorate needs to just rise up and say enough is enough with this nonsense. So and that goes for both ends. I mean, if you got extremes on both sides of this thing, but I hate to bring it up. Nixon called it the silent majority. Well, it truly is a silent majority out there that needs to get a little more vocal in this. And so one thing I think is going to happen with AI and robotics is that it is changing so quickly and so dramatically that it's starting to get people's attention. And part of that's going to be what happens to people that can't get work, don't get or are being laid off on this thing. So we'll see what happens, but it's ultimately got to be a grassroots effort from that very middle of this country to get refocused on what made things so good for this country. I mean, it's a combination of government programs as well as private enterprise. You go back to the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, you had the GI Bill that educated millions of returning soldiers out there. You had VA, FHA, government program, but then was supported by builders who built all these suburbs that were out there. Medicare, Medicaid in the 60s that occurred, growing use of Social Security out there. So it's not one or the other. You can't have full government creating 5-year plans that never worked. We saw that in the Soviet Union. And you can't have a laissez-faire private enterprise only because they're out after their own vested interest. So you've got to have a combination of government and private enterprise to ultimately benefit the consumers that are out there. We'll see what happens. It's a tough situation right now. I mean, the invectives being hurled back and forth are so childish. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, somebody wrote a script about this. You say, "Nah, there's no way that could happen," but it has.
Yeah, yeah. It's we're reaching levels that everybody, our lives on this earth are tiny fraction of it, and we all want our life to be meaningful. So the things are the worst they've ever been, and that may be true, but it doesn't change the fact that we need to try to do something about it. And doing nothing is not acceptable, and that's what Congress is doing right now. So what about the warning? The warning that policymakers should be watching that they're not, because it's like they don't get it. It's like they're I don't want to get into what they're doing instead, but it's like they're kind of oblivious because of the party leaders are not focusing their energy on the right direction.
Again, it's going to get down to getting people you want in office voted in, getting the people that historically have been not focusing on these issues, voted out. Uh, and I won't even get into this whole issue of the voting systems and things that are occurring in terms of, is it legitimate? Is it illegitimate? The votes that are occurring. But that aside, that it's got to be a grassroots effort, and it's got to be leadership in the country at the grassroots level to start getting people's attention. And it's got to be fed by facts. And it can't be, quote unquote, fake news, if you will. I mean, you don't know what's real anymore on social media. And so how do you get the message out, legitimate messages out to people? And that needs to be worked on. That's part of the focus of the book that I wrote was ultimately what AI has done to what people's perception of reality is. And so it's you have to understand if you read it, doesn't mean it's true. You've got to verify sources. And not to get too far in the weeds, but that says you got to start at the education system of critical thinking, question. Yeah, back in the 60s, it was never trust anybody over 30. Yeah, question everything that you do, that these people do. Well, we've got to get back a little bit to that where you question leadership out there. Why are you doing this? And start getting people more engaged in the political system.
Yeah, I used to be somebody that I've always voted every time I can. But some people they get home from work at 6, the polls close at 7 or 8, and it's just you're exhausted, you got to take care of the kids. I do understand that, but we can no longer say, you know what, I understand that, it's okay. Because what I say to people is, yeah, it's going to take a lot more of your energy to get our politicians back on track. Because if you don't, you're saying, I'm happy with the scraps the billionaires are allowing me to have. And we can no longer do that. This is like everybody's got to pay attention, and we need to reward the good ones, and we need to vote out the bad ones, period. So if you say, oh, I don't involve, that doesn't affect me, or I don't have time, we can't live with that anymore. People have to get active. So
I agree.
well, this is beyond the paper a little bit. So policy is a big thing, and we're working on some policies at FSIC. We're trying to support the tax cut for the All-American tax cut, which will bring back a lot of write-offs that were eliminated during the Reagan tax cuts and have since, the financial situation has outgrown the standard deduction. So we're trying to do some things that will help. We're introducing concepts that will try to slowly help the healthcare industry to give more of the control to the people that should have it, which is the patients. So we're trying to do some things, but is there anything, what are a couple of the main things that the policymakers are ignoring that are going to be that are where we keep saying that are going to affect jobs? AI is going to affect these markets. All these things are happening now. I hate to tell you, I don't want to be a doomer, but they're happening now. We think that we might lose 3 million jobs this year. So a lot of, a big portion of those AI.
Yeah,
People
traditional
keep saying,
jobs.
"Oh, we're not losing." If you listen to any of the tech oligarchs, they're saying, "Oh, that's not going to happen." I'm like, well, it's in your best interest to say that. So sorry, I didn't mean to step on the question I asked you.
Which was, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So the warning there's warning signs out there, and the policymakers should be watching. What is like a give me a main one, and so that's something that we can work on.
Well, to your point on the your initiative with the tax implications, uh, you know, having people the ability to write off transportation to get to work. We had the remote work going on for a long time, and then companies are now mandating people come back to work. Well, whether it's public transportation, most people aren't going to don't have access to public transportation, so they have to have the car. They have to drive in. The gas costs, obviously, doing that. The parking costs once they get into town. Uh, that's not deductible. Yet businesses can deduct transportation expenses, but yet individuals who work in the business cannot. So that's a small aspect of it. Healthcare ought to be transportable. The benefits ought to be transportable as people move from job to job. And so, there are a lot of initiatives, and folks can look at that bill to get the details. But people ought to be able to get some support for childcare to be able to get into work and support these folks. I mean, some businesses, have in the past put in daycare in their facilities, but that's sort of few and far between. And,
Yeah.
and so, childcare is a huge expense. Uh, if you look at childcare from birth through high school or college, it's significant. And when you talk about inflation, just look at tuition uh, for colleges. I don't mean to get too much on a tangent, but then it gets back to government, private industry. Uh, Government had these land grants for state universities back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so people who lived in state paid minimal, if no tuition for their 4-year college degree. Then it became a competitive enterprise. And you look at some schools, obviously the private schools are very high. I mean, USC, California is kind of knocking $100,000 a year coming up. And so
Geez.
you think credit, look at student loans, the trillions of dollars that are in student loans. There's got to be these poor kids and families who are induced into these loans so the kids get the education. I don't think looked at the long-term consequence of how long that person would be in debt, which inhibits their ability to buy a home, inhibits their want to start a family because of the costs associated with it. And so you've got all these unintended consequences of this that people are complaining about right now, complaining about the falling birth rates, complaining about the fact you're going to have fewer younger people supporting older people, supporting the Social Security system. So, we've got a tendency of focusing on the crisis at the point in time and fix for that particular crisis, which generates further unintended consequences down the road. And trying to have folks take a holistic approach to this is very difficult because it's very difficult to communicate effectively to people why we're doing this and what the potential upside and downside of this is. It's just easier to give a talking point that people repeat time and again to get people to buy in on these things. So it's multifaceted. It's not just government. It's just not our elected official. It's the electorate that have to assume more responsibility. And to your point, take the energy, take the time to get involved and to work on this because it affects them, but it's more importantly, it's going to affect the generations down the road.
Well, they said that a generation ago and a generation before that, and it's affecting us dramatically now.
Yeah.
So this is very real, and it's not getting better generation to generation. So
We've
we
always
can do a
found a
whole
way
other
out.
show.
We found a way out of from the Civil War through the Great Depression. through Vietnam era, the Watergate, all these crises that occurred, we've been able to, at some point in time, recover. But there's always been a drag. There's always been something ongoing that fuels the changes down the road. So will we find a way out of this? Yeah, I'm sure we will. It's not going to be dystopian. It's not going to be AI and robots taking over the world. But it's going to be uh, a joint effort. How do we use this new technology to benefit everybody? I mean, I'll be honest with you, the work that I did in the 80s and 90s will take me weeks or months with a client. It will take days now with AI, particularly given the data that's available from these clients. So what I did, I couldn't do anymore. So I had to reinvent myself and move on to other things. And that's, easier said than done. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's just going to be one of those things that I hate to use. It's trite, but necessities of other invention. If somebody gets into a point where it's so deep, finally they start thinking outside the box. What can I do to overcome this? What can I do to take control of myself? And part of that is not total self-reliance, but as part of it's going to be getting the politicians in that will work in a holistic manner,
yeah.
private industry to make things happen.
All right. Well, I'd like to do a closing summary here, and then I'll give you final a few minutes to talk about your book. We were going to talk about the beginning, but
Yeah,
us policy and economic nerds get right into it. So the America's consumer debt crisis cannot be explained by irresponsible spending alone. Debt has increasingly filled the gap between household income and the cost of basic necessities.
right.
Consumers need transparent and realistic pathways out of unmanageable debt. Minimum payments, credit counseling, debt settlement, and bankruptcy each serve different household circumstances, some better than others. Principal reduction can be particularly effective because it changes the underlying debt balance. Um, and we need to include some of these, like debt relief should be viewed as part of the financial recovery system. And right now it's kind of demonized. It costs so much. And I hate to focus on that, but we are about solutions. And you've laid out every time I do one of these now, it just feels like the doom podcast because things are dire and we need the solutions. And so if you'd like to sum up anything and then tell us about your book and how we can get it.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think you did a great summary on it, and it's uh, the difference between what it costs to live and what people are earning, and how the trends have been over the last 40 or 50 years of the move, who participates in the productivity gains that the economy has generated over that period of time. And increasingly, it's the people who work are participating less in this, significantly less these days. And in some form or fashion, that has to change. And how that changes, I don't know. I mean, yes, businesses' priority, companies' priority is return value to shareholders. But unless you treat employees properly, it's going to be tough delivering those products and services that add value to shareholders. So part of it is going to be on corporations uh, dealing with the changing environment. Part of it's going to be on individuals pushing for appropriate representation and dealing with the needs that are out there. We've got to get away from this uh, credit supported lifestyle that many people, not voluntarily, but are forced to live with,
Right, right.
make ends meet. And it's tough to say, do as I say, not as I do, when the government is increasing national debt by trillions of dollars. And
Our payments are going to be $1 trillion a year at some point on all the interest on this debt.
it's
$1 trillion. cure cancer. If we
Oh,
spent that one, I mean,
yeah, it's amazing. And uh, there are arguments pro and cons to debt, but this extreme level of debt is something I think that is will raise its ugly head at some point in time, especially if the United States loses its status as the reserve currency in the world. If people lose faith in the United States and start saying, well, we'll buy your debt, but it's going to cost you more because we think the risk is higher now. And so and
we
one
don't
thing
have a single
that
AAA
happens,
rating anymore.
once people decide not to buy our debt, we're in a world of hurt. So that obviously has to be addressed. So it's multifaceted. It's like anything else. There's no silver bullet. There's no single answer that's out there. But as long as people like you and Kevin and the folks at FSIC and other organizations keep on raising the issue and bringing more people into the dialogue, the more people get educated, I think, sooner or later, they will affect change.
So, what? Give me the title of your book and the
Thank
premise.
you. It's the Silesian Accord, SILICEAN Accord. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and ebook, paperback, and hardback. And basically, what I did was based upon the travels during my career. I made a sort of a historical fiction on the first half of the book, saying there is this called the Accord behind the '87 crash, the Thai baht crisis in the '90s, the Russian ruble crisis, the English pound crisis, and so on. So that was the fictionalized, but it's all based on historical fact. Then it leads into the
Nice.
second half of the book, because this organization used algorithms to, uh, in essence, train markets to do things that they benefited from, evolved into the use of AI going forward, and how AI not only they've used to manipulate markets, but they've used to manipulate political systems. That because of social media and the algorithms that are built around whatever you view online, because you click on something one time or you hesitate as you're scrolling through, hesitate for a little bit on that segment, all of a sudden you're going to see a feed hitting you with this stuff. I can't tell you how many things I'm getting now for book authors. They're inundating me. Oh, we can help you sell 1,000 a day or whatever the case is. I said, okay, thank you.
Oh my Lord, I believe it.
But it does get into this. Individuals are being cycled into their own realities because they're looking at the same feeds, they're looking at the same cable channels. They're not getting any different points of view that are out there. And so they're being manipulated in terms of what's occurring. And I think that's happening right now. I mean, some feedback I've been getting from readers has been, I think we're already there in a lot of cases. So it was a fun book. Took 2 years to write. I mean, I look at my first draft compared to what it ended up being. It's completely different, but it was a great exercise in both kind of using the scenes, the sites where I had worked over the years internationally as a base, but then my interest in AI and what AI can do going into the future. And so I think it's a pretty good read.
Well, again, I said I read the beginning of it. It's pretty amazing. It's very using concepts that are happening right now.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I didn't know that those were your travels, so that's very interesting. So I
Yeah,
think we should.
each one of those sites I had done some work in.
Wow. Well, we should probably close it down here. So thank you so much for being with us today. And if you're interested in learning more about FSIC and its initiatives, please go to our website at fsicoalition.org. I would like to thank all the FSIC network members for their efforts to promote economic empowerment and social justice. Thanks for listening today.